glance, Revolutionary Girl Utena seems like a simple story. A girl was saved by a prince as a child, and now she wants to become one, while also finding the prince from her past. There's a girl, Anthe, who plays the role of princess and will be engaged to anybody who wins the duel for her. After winning a duel, Utena does whatever she can to keep Anthe safe. Simple, right? Except it's not. In fact, it's very complicated. Every aspect is so complicated, in fact, a video could be made about every part of it. Most Utena video essays I've seen are around 40 minutes to an hour long. As you may notice from my videos, I tend to keep it below 15 minutes if I can. Basically, I don't want to make a super long video. So even though I want to make Utena videos, each video I make is going to be focused on a specific thing, and I'll try not to change the topic. For this video, I wanted to start off with Utena and her characterization. Utena, as we established, wants to be a prince. In English and Western culture, a prince is an established title, not an earned one. A prince is somebody who was born into royalty and is in line to rule a kingdom. That's not what a prince is here, though. A prince is a title given upon holding certain ideals and acting in a certain way. Those ideals in question are being noble and honorable, being somebody who will protect others, especially those who are seen as needing saving, like Anthe. Utena wants to be a prince. It's her dream to be one, and she seems to be exactly that upon first meeting her. The more you get to know her throughout the series, the more it becomes obvious she's not like that, though. Even her actions in the first few episodes feel less prince-like. Utena is very oblivious and naive. She's good at solving issues, but she's not good at finding the root of the problem. I think a good example of this is some of her responses to the Shadow Girls. I can't find the exact clip I was looking for, but in one episode she'd responded by saying, "Get a new one." In another one she said, "So just take it off." In one, the Shadow Girls say they have to get married, and Utena responds, "Why get married at all?" She's looking for a solution to the problem, but she isn't necessarily paying attention to the cause of the problem. With the first two, this is fine until it gets to the third example where she says, "Why get married at all?" Well, because they have to. It's not a choice. The solution would need to be related to the cause in order for it to be a true solution. In this case, if you didn't want to get married, the law would need to be changed. A better example of this is in the first arc. Utena fights the duels for Anthe because she kinda has to, or at least that's the impression we get. As the Rose Bride, whoever wins the duels owns Anthe. If the other people who are going to own her are doing so for selfish purposes, Utena believes that by being the one who owns Anthe, she can prevent people from using Anthe for selfish purposes. It's great that she wants to help her, but it's stated multiple times that Utena believes the duels are wrong. So the answer to this isn't to participate in them, it would be to get rid of them entirely. Rather than look for a way to get rid of them, Utena chooses to participate in them. Utena is objectively a selfish person. This isn't meant to be a criticism of her as a person, because I honestly don't think she realizes it, at least at first. I think Utena is a person who tries very hard to be selfless, but in her quest to do that ends up making decisions for her own sake rather than others. For example, if she truly believed the duels were unjust, she would be putting in a lot more effort to find out exactly why they happen and how she can prevent them. Instead, she doesn't really question things all that much and goes along with it. When she meets Akio, Anthe thanks her for not telling Akio that she's the Rose Bride. Utena knows that they're really close, so this should cause her to question why her brother is allegedly oblivious to his sister's role, how she became the Rose Bride, and why the chairman wouldn't know about the duels. Instead of asking any of these questions, she just says, "Yeah, no problem." On top of this, despite priding herself on being one of the few people who cares about Anthe, she doesn't really show much interest in the beginning. She has no idea Anthe has a brother until much later, and it comes to the shock of both herself and the audience. Despite thinking she's one of the few people to truly respect Anthe, she's still thinking of Anthe the same as the other duelists. She's thinking of Anthe as the Rose Bride. She wants to be a prince, and Anthe is somebody who is in need of saving. Utena originally fights for Anthe because having a princess inherently makes her a prince. Yes, throughout the course of the series, Utena gains more meaning behind fighting for Anthe when she gets to know her more, but that doesn't mean Utena's original intentions were any different from the other duelists. This becomes especially clear when Utena loses her duel to Toga. In the episode, she had made it clear to Anthe that she didn't want Anthe to be the Rose Bride, so Anthe agreed she shouldn't be the Rose Bride. Upon losing, Anthe immediately folds to Toga's interpretation of who Anthe is. This forces Utena to come to the realization that Anthe was only saying what she wanted to hear, and that she didn't want what she truly wanted, but just what Utena wanted for her. Every protagonist has a fatal flaw that drives the plot forward and can only be resolved upon the protagonist overcoming that flaw or being overcome by it. Utena's fatal flaw is that she lacks self-awareness. She knows there are reasons why she does things, but she fails to be able to explain her reasoning. An example of this is her motivation to become a prince. There's this common theme of showing people something eternal. When Utena's parents died, she stayed in a coffin and refused to leave, thinking death would be better and that she'd need to find something eternal to feel like she should live again. At the beginning of the series, it's implied that meeting the prince itself was what inspired her, but when we see the flashback with Toga, we know that's not true. Because if it was, Toga would also have fit the bill. So her prince showed her something eternal, but she never brings it up, as if that's not what was important in the story. It's like saying you have a favorite book, but you can't describe the plot. This also goes along with the duels themselves, or her initial relationship with Anthy. Despite trying to appear selfless, it was all ultimately done with selfish intent. If she was truly worried about Anthy's safety, you'd think she'd be more concerned with why Anthy was leaving once a week at nighttime. She doesn't question things, and that's the problem. Furthermore, we know this because Utena herself admitted it. In the scene where Anthy tries to kill herself and Utena saves her, she admits that she knows all this. She admits that she knows she's playing the role of prince for her ego and not out of selflessness. She admits that she's been selfish and only thinking of herself, using her care for Anthy as a way to pretend her goals are more noble than they really are. The thing the series revolves around is the idea of causing revolution, as in changing the world. Utena genuinely wants to change the world, and it's what she wanted even before she became part of the duels. The inciting incident for Utena wanting to become a prince is that when she was a child and her parents died, she realized that there's no such thing as an eternal thing. An eternal thing meaning something that will never fade. For example, parents that will never die. An eternal thing is something that will never go away. It's the after effects of a revolution. For example, the Industrial Revolution heavily sped up the process in which humans began to adapt, and even if we're not technically in that time period anymore, it sped things up to the point that it's become eternal in our history. Even when it's over, it'll never go away. Utena wants to create a revolution because she wants to make something eternal. At this point, there's two main things we need to address. One, how being a prince will not cause a revolution, and two, how a revolution doesn't need to be eternal. I'm going to very briefly explain how these two things connect to this video, but because they are complicated in of themselves, if I make any future videos regarding them, I'll link them in the description. So, starting off with one of Utena's main failures, thinking she needs to be a prince in order to start a revolution. One, Utena doesn't cause a revolution by being a prince or more masculine. It's definitely examined as outside the norm at the academy, and she does get in trouble for it, but it isn't revolutionary. It's the same way how women being able to vote or wear pants isn't revolutionary anymore. At the time these things were allowed, it was revolutionary, but it isn't anymore despite the same oppressive system being in the background. Because you can't demolish the system being gender discrimination, by only adjusting a part of it. You need to change everything. You need to tear down the entire tower. I saw one video essay that said something along the lines of, Utena didn't change the system, she just became a different part of it, which I'll link in the description if you're all interested in that video. Now this next point. You don't need to make something eternal to cause a revolution. This might seem contradictory from previous things I've said. I did say that eternity is the after effects of a revolution, right? Well, when I say you don't need to make something eternal, I mean you don't need something to seem eternal to everyone. For example, in the Industrial Revolution, the cotton gin was invented. However, I personally don't think of the cotton gin when I think of something representative of eternity. When I think of something eternal, I think more in line of the event the cotton gin was part of, the Industrial Revolution. I mentioned earlier that I don't think women being allowed to wear pants is revolutionary, but that's because I was born in 2006 and I've always been allowed to wear pants. Pants do not represent something eternal or something revolutionary to me. The difference between revolution and eternity is that something eternal is something that's existence in of itself will be prominent from its birth to the end of time. A revolution is something that changes things. If you watched my previous video where I analyzed Griffith's theme of ambition, you might recognize what I'm about to say. The truth is that while some things seem as if they don't matter, everything will have an effect, no matter how unimportant it might seem. Everything will have an impact, as long as it affects somebody else in any capacity, including not affecting them at all. It will have an impact. You and your actions will affect how you go through life, and how your actions affect others will change how they go through life. This will spiral into how things go in the future, changing the entire human race. If a historical dictator was never born, the course of history would be changed just as much as if a war did or didn't happen. Whoever would be considered my first ancestor revolutionized the world by simply starting a family line that's led every single member of my lineage, including myself. For example, that ancestor having children has somehow spiraled into me writing this script, and whether I know it or not, I have had a lasting effect on the people around me, which will further spiral in the future. For yet another example, in case it's not getting through to you, think of it like this. Alexander the Great is famous for conquering most of the known world at the time he was alive. He was tutored by Aristotle, who was taught by Plato, who was taught by Socrates. So, Socrates unknowingly was, by proxy, a cause of most of the known world being conquered by some guy. In that way, he revolutionized the world by only helping one person. If you still don't get it, I don't know what to tell you. The only reason we don't see every individual action as revolutionary is because in order to understand something's true impact, you need to focus on only that thing, and every single thought it has caused in another person, and every single action that thing has caused. It is very unlikely that you will see all sides of the story and fully understand, and furthermore live to the end of time to see it tumble into a butterfly effect that naturally makes other things adapt. But so much as doing something is revolutionary. But changing the way somebody views the world is especially revolutionary, even if you only revolutionize the life of one person. I'm obviously referring to Utena being a symbolic vehicle for Anthy to leave her abusive relationship with Akio. In terms of noticeable effects, Utena did not revolutionize the world. At the end of the series, everybody at the Academy forgot about Utena, and Akio stated that she didn't change the world. However, she caused a revolution within Anthy that caused her to leave. Even if she only changed the actions of one person, it still was revolutionary. So while what she did was not something eternal, it will inevitably cause something eternal. Someday. Anyways, guys, that was my video essay about Utena. I suspect there will be more along the lines somewhere, but that was it for now. I won't be making any more videos until 2024, so if you plan on sticking around, I suggest subscribing. Also, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like or dislike, whichever you fancy. And with that, I hope you'll have an amazing day.